The irony was that she had picked the venue herself. 4 years ago, standing in the middle of an empty ballroom with paint-stained walls and broken chandeliers, Valentina Coretti had looked at the wreckage of the old Hargrove estate and seen something nobody else could. Not the collapsed ceiling in the East Wing, not the $2.3 million in structural debt, not the Atlanta attorneys who'd written it off as a liability dressed in old money clothing. She had seen what it could become. Now, on a Thursday evening in late April, she stood at the private owner's entrance of the Hargrove Grand, Atlanta's most sought-after luxury event venue, and watched the valet line stretch half a block down Peachtree Street. Black cars, designer gowns, the kind of crowd that didn't arrive anywhere without being seen arriving. Her assistant, Priya, appeared at her elbow. "They're already inside. Cocktail hour started 7 minutes ago." "And the Castellano party?" "Reserved the entire North Ballroom, full buyout, catering, florals, live quartet." A pause. He arrived with her. Valentina adjusted the single diamond drop earring on her left ear, checked that her cream blazer sat exactly right, and said, "Good. Make sure table 7 has the Barolo I selected. Tell Marco the welcome remarks wait until I'm seated." "Yes, Miss Coretti." She walked inside. She had not planned to be here tonight. The embossed invitation had arrived 3 days ago, addressed not to Valentina Coretti, CEO of Coretti Hospitality Group, but to the Hargrove Grand Management Team, a courtesy copy forwarded by her events coordinator with a sticky note, "Thought you'd want to know, D." The event was a launch party for Castellano and Reed, Atlanta's newest luxury real estate development firm, co-founded by Dominic Castellano, her ex-husband. They had been divorced for 4 years, 3 months, and 11 days. Not that she counted. It was simply a number she knew the way she knew all numbers, precisely and without sentiment. The marriage had lasted 6 years, the unraveling 6 months. Though the cracks had been there much earlier, hiding beneath Dominic's charm and her own determination to make something work that had quietly stopped working. The end had not been dramatic. That's almost what made it worse. No screaming, no thrown dishes, no affairs discovered in the small hours of the morning. Just a Tuesday evening in February. The two of them at opposite ends of a dining table in a house Dominic had chosen and Valentina had paid for. And the look on his face. The look of a man considering a project he'd decided to abandon. "You're obsessed with that building," he'd said. The building being the Hargrove estate, which she'd just signed a letter of intent to acquire. "It's a good investment." "It's a money pit, Val. You're going to sink everything we have into a condemned property, and I'm not going to watch it happen." "I disagree." He set down his fork. "You've been wrong before." She hadn't answered, not because she had nothing to say, but because she had learned, by then, that certain conversations with Dominic only went one direction. 3 weeks later, he asked for a divorce. "I don't see a future with someone who can't admit when she's in over her head. You're going to lose everything on that building." He moved out on a Saturday. By Monday, Valentina had called her attorney, restructured her personal assets, and formally begun the acquisition of the Hargrove estate. The North Ballroom was already humming when she entered through the interior corridor. 200 guests, Atlanta's real estate elite, development money, city council adjacents, people who shook hands with both eyes scanning the room for the next hand to shake. The space looked extraordinary, and it should. Her team had spent 4 months restoring every inch, the original crown moldings, the hand-laid marble floors, the arched windows overlooking a courtyard garden she'd redesigned from scratch. She took her seat at table 7. Across the room, she found him without trying. That was always how it was with people you had once loved. Your eyes located them automatically, like an old reflex you couldn't untrain. Dominic Castellano was 41 now. He looked exactly the same, which made everything both easier and harder. Same jaw, same posture, same way of standing in a room as though waiting for it to acknowledge him first. He was with a woman Valentina didn't recognize. Tall, auburn-haired, laughing at something Dominic had just said in the way women laughed when they were still in the early, effortless part of things. He hadn't seen her yet. Good. She lifted her glass of Barolo and waited.
The welcome remarks began at 7:45. Dominic's business partner, Carter Reed, took the small stage near the east window and spoke for 6 minutes about vision, risk, and Atlanta's evolving skyline. Polished, enthusiastic, entirely unaware of the particular electricity quietly building in the room. Then Dominic stepped up. He was a good speaker. She had always acknowledged that, the kind of voice that made people lean forward, unhurried, assured, filling space without effort. 4 years ago, he began, I made a decision to bet on myself, to walk away from comfort and build something from the ground up. People told me it was too soon, that the market wasn't ready, that I was making a mistake. He smiled. I've always believed that the people who tell you it can't be done are usually the people who couldn't do it themselves. Polite laughter. Valentina took a slow sip of wine. Tonight is about more than a business launch. It's about what happens when you stop waiting for permission to succeed and simply decide to begin. Applause. He was still speaking when his eyes moved across the room with the casual confidence of a man entirely at home and stopped. She watched it happen in real time. The slight pause, the recalibration, the flicker of something that crossed his face too fast to name. He had found her. Valentina did not look away. She held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to be intentional, short enough to be unbothered, and then turned to the woman beside her and resumed a conversation she had barely started. Carter Reed appeared at her table at 8:15, just as the main course was being served, with the energy of a man whose understanding of the room had just been rearranged. Valentina Coretti? He extended his hand. Carter Reed, I apologize for interrupting. Not at all. Congratulations on the launch. Thank you. He looked around the ballroom with genuine appreciation. This venue is extraordinary. The restoration work alone, 14 months on the interior. Right. He leaned forward slightly. I've been trying to identify the ownership group. We're looking at 2 development parcels on the west side that could use a hospitality anchor, and this property would be exactly the kind of partner we'd want at the table. Would you know who I'd contact? Valentina set down her fork. You're looking at her. Carter blinked. I'm sorry? Coretti Hospitality Group. I'm the founder and CEO. We acquired this property 4 years ago. 3 additional properties in Georgia, 1 in Nashville. She said it simply, the way she stated all facts. I'd be happy to have that conversation.
He stared a beat too long. Dominic never mentioned... He stopped himself. No, I don't imagine he did. She knew the moment Dominic was told. She was mid-conversation with Carter and his attorney when she saw it, the quiet exchange across the room, the way Dominic's expression moved from easy celebration to something considerably more careful. He crossed the room 4 minutes later. She had decided in the 3 days between receiving the invitation and choosing to attend exactly how she would handle this, not with coldness, too obvious, too much like effort, not with warmth, dishonest, with the same level, unruffled composure she brought to every negotiation that mattered. Val? He stopped at the edge of her circle. The people around her redistributed themselves, reading the room the way people in rooms like this always did. Dominic? She turned to face him fully. It's a beautiful event. You own this building. I do. A muscle moved in his jaw. Since when? The acquisition closed about 4 months after you left, 14 months of restoration. We opened 18 months ago. My team handled both. The color that crossed his face was not quite embarrassment and not quite anger, something in between, the expression of a man realizing the story he'd been telling himself has a chapter he never knew about. You never said anything. You didn't ask. I let that land. You also told me the property was a money pit and that I was going to lose everything. I didn't feel the need to provide updates. Val, the building appraised at $9.1 million last quarter, strongest revenue year on record. We're currently in due diligence on a property in Savannah. I paused.
Carter mentioned the West Side parcels. I told him I'd be open to a conversation. That stands, if you're interested. Dominic looked at her for a long moment. The party continued around them, glasses clinking, the quartet playing something low and unhurried, laughter drifting from across the room. "You told me you couldn't do it," he said. His voice had changed. "You did. I was wrong. Yes."
He exhaled, looked down at the marble floor, her marble floor, restored by her team, paid for by her company, then back up at her. "Is that why you came tonight? To make sure I knew?" Valentina considered the question. It deserved a real answer. "I came because this is my venue, and I have every right to be in it. What you do with what you've seen tonight is entirely up to you." She picked up her glass, excused herself with the unhurried grace of a woman who had somewhere to be, and walked toward the private corridor. Behind her, she heard Carter say something low to Dominic. She did not turn around. She found quiet in the owner's private lounge on the second floor. It was her favorite room in the building, not because it was the most impressive, but because it was the only room nobody else had designed. Every other space had been a collaboration. Architects, consultants, restoration specialists, her project manager Lorenzo Vega, who had an opinion about everything and was usually right. But this room she had sketched herself on a legal pad at 2 a.m. on a night when the renovation was 3 weeks behind schedule, the contractor had just quit, and the bank had called about a covenant review on the acquisition loan. She had sat in her car in the parking lot of the unfinished building, looked up at the dark second-floor windows, and drawn what she needed the room to become. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a writing desk facing the east window, a leather chair positioned to catch the morning light. She sat in that chair now, heels off, legs tucked beneath her, a fresh glass of Barolo on the side table. The sounds of the party filtered up from below, muffled laughter, the faint thread of the quartet, the hum of 200 people celebrating a beginning. She was not unhappy. That was the thing she needed to sit with. She had expected to feel something sharper tonight, vindication maybe, or the satisfaction of a long-held patience finally paid out. What she actually felt was quieter than that, more settled, like a calculation that had been running in the background for 4 years had simply, finally, completed. Priya knocked at 9:45. "He's asking to see you." Valentina didn't need to ask who. "Where is he?" "Waiting at the base of the private staircase, alone." A beat. He sent her home. She thought about it for exactly as long as it deserved. Send him up. Dominic looked different when he wasn't performing. He stood in the doorway of her private lounge and looked around slowly. The bookshelves, the desk, the east window, the city laid out beyond it like a map of everything still possible. "You designed this room," he said. Not a question. "Yes." He sat in the chair across from hers. Neither of them spoke. Below, someone laughed loudly, and the sound rose through the floor like a wave and dissolved. "I've been down there for an hour, listening to people talk about your company. Carter's been doing his research. 3 of our development investors have worked with Coretti Hospitality Group. I know my client list, yes." A short, rueful sound escaped him, almost a laugh. "Of course you do." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at her directly. "Val, I need to say something, without an exit strategy." She said nothing. That was permission enough. "When I left, I told myself I was being realistic, that I was the only one willing to see things clearly, that you were going to make a catastrophic mistake, and I was protecting myself." He paused. "I was wrong, not just about the building, about you. About what you were capable of, about what you were already building while I sat across that dinner table calling you reckless." His voice dropped. "I left because I was scared you were going to succeed in a way that made me irrelevant, and I dressed that fear in so much practical language, I almost believed it myself." The room held the admission carefully. Valentina looked at him for a long moment, the man she had married, the man who had looked at her life's work and seen only risk,
The man who had underestimated her so completely and so consistently that she had eventually stopped correcting him and simply started building. "I know," she said. He blinked. "You know?" "I knew then, too. Not every detail, but the shape of it." She reached for her glass. "You weren't cruel, Dominic. You were just a man who needed to be the most capable person in the room, and somewhere along the way, that room started to feel too small." She paused. "I couldn't fix that for you, and I couldn't shrink myself enough to make it comfortable, so we ended." He was quiet. "Do you hate me for it?" "No," she meant it. "You leaving when you did gave me the one thing I needed most." "What's that?" "Uninterrupted focus." He laughed, a real one, brief and honest, and something in the room shifted, the way pressure shifts when a window opens. "Carter wants to bring a formal proposal about the West Side parcels," he said. "I know. He emailed my COO 20 minutes ago." "Of course he did." Dominic stood slowly. At the door, he paused. "You build something extraordinary, Val. Not just this building. Everything." It cost him something to say it. "I'm sorry I wasn't the person who believed in it first." Valentina looked at him one last time, her ex-husband, a man she had loved, lost, and outlasted. "I believed in it first. That was always enough." He nodded once and walked out. She listened to his footsteps on the private staircase, growing quieter with each step until the sounds of the party swallowed them completely. She turned to the east window, Atlanta spread out beyond the glass, lit, restless, full of everything still ahead. She picked up her phone and called Lorenzo. "The Savannah property," she said when he answered. "Move the due diligence meeting to Monday." A pause on the line. "Everything all right?" "Better than all right." She looked out at the city. "I'm ready." She hung up. On the desk behind her, buried beneath the evening's paperwork, sat a single sheet she hadn't noticed Priya slip in earlier. A preliminary site assessment for a property in Charleston, flagged urgent, addressed not to Coretti Hospitality Group, addressed to Castellano and Reed. Someone had already decided they were going to work together. They just hadn't told either of them yet. The most dangerous thing you can do to a woman who believes in herself is leave her alone with her vision. You might come back one day and find she's built a cathedral where you saw ruins. Hey guys, that story was a wrap. Thank you for choosing to listen to my story once again. It means everything to me and I greatly appreciate you all. Did you enjoy the story? Was it worth your time? Tell me if it got you off guard or you already knew how it would end. Let's have that discussion in the comment. Here is an opportunity for you. If you would like me to feature a story of yours, indicate in the comments so I can get in touch with you. Stay tuned for more interesting stories coming your way. I love you all.